Hopefully I upload this video before you guys have had dinner because it'll probably make you want to throw up unless you're a certified weirdo. Now, of course, we're going to talk about Russia Ukraine. We're also going to be covering a little bit. There's some high quality footage of the tests on the kamikaze drones that the Russians have purchased from Iran to use in Ukraine. So I've got that footage next. And of course, we're going to look at the Institute for the Study of War key takeaways. There's not too many. Referendums, mobilization, and in case you're in need of some nuke-free real estate, well, that might have you covered there. Message from the Estonian Prime Minister, a little bit from the EU Watchdogs. Germany has officially lost its marbles is going to be one of our ending segments. And three things on the economy, such as Amazon FedEx and a message from Goldman Sachs. So without further ado, here's this absolutely disgusting clip. But if you haven't seen it, it's well worth watching.
But guess what? We got a lot to do. You gotta say hi to me. We go back a long way. She was 12, I was 30, but anyway, this woman helped me get an awful lot done. Anyway, but guess what?
Ha ha ha, at any rate, absolutely beyond disturbing, to say the very least. She was 12, I was 30, and all of these cretins in the background are just laughing, which normally I'd say laughing like it was an everyday occurrence, but in their case, it probably is an everyday occurrence. Now, before I get censored, moving on to Russia Ukraine. Mobilization processes across different regions may exacerbate social tensions in Russia already raised by perceived inequalities. Also, if you guys are new, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and throughout the video, comment anything interesting down below, and make sure to hit the like button as well. And the other thing that we're going to be covering after a few of these articles, Anthony Blinken has said some mind-bogglingly stupid things in yesterday, September 23rd's address on Sino-American relations with the foreign minister from China. So I'm also going to cover that. Now, back into Ukraine, Russia. After the mobilization, so that's obviously being perceived as inequalities in different regions as they seem to be recruiting, I should say conscripting, from predominantly rural areas due to less pushback, less media coverage, things like that. Now, Chechnya also has a few things to say, as they've already deployed 20,000 servicemen to the war since February, and they're also threatening to mobilize any protesters in Chechnya and send them to the front. So interesting to see how the different regions react and different countries. Ukrainian forces continue to advance north and west of Lyman. Ukrainian forces continued their interdiction campaign in Kherson Oblast and maintained operational silence regarding the Ukrainian progress on the Axis. Russian forces continue to launch unsuccessful assaults near Bakhmut and northwest of Donetsk city. Ukrainian forces reportedly shot down an Iranian-made drone in an unspecified area of the Black Sea, likely near Odessa. And again, keep in mind, this site does source things, understandingwar.org, from a variety of sources. And for the last 3 days since mobilization, the propaganda has been over the top. Return to our historical motherland. 4 Ukrainian regions vote in referendums on joining Russia. So, of course, we covered that in yesterday's video. In total, the 4 regions make up nearly 20% of Ukraine's territory, and speaking of 20%, they had roughly 20% of the population turn out to vote on the first day, supposedly. Now, officials from the 2 breakaway republics in the Donbass in particular have pointed to the years of shelling and atrocities conducted by Ukraine's military and nationalist militias, such as the Azov Battalion, as reasons for these referendums. This is probably where my dislikes will start to come in, but hey, don't shoot the messenger. Do some research on your own. It's pretty fascinating, especially when Ukraine cut off the water to these regions, and Russia has essentially been providing them with humanitarian aid for, well, 9 years. Anyway, some 14,000 people have died in total among both sides of the fighting in what was essentially a localized civil war since even before the current conflict. Okay, again, before Russia invaded Ukraine. Since 2014, the Ukrainian government has all along initiated policies and attempts to stamp out Russian language and culture in the regions. Now here you can see the 4. And the mobilization begins. Scenes around Russia. People saying, "What are we going for?" Summons deliverable to eligible men at midnight. School teachers pressed into handing out draft notices. Men given an hour to pack their things and appear at draft centers. That's from The Guardian. And of course, women sobbing as they sent their husbands and sons off to fight in Russia's war in Ukraine, which that is, to put it bluntly, nothing different than any country and any time any loved one is being sent off to war. So, of course, they're spinning all of the best clips for whichever side's propaganda. You guys remember that Ukraine put out the exact same content when they started recruiting everybody, men, women, and children, months ago. Anyway, Russian airports continue to be packed and tickets abroad reportedly sold out for days or even weeks as people with means to exit the country on fears of being sent to fight try to bail. Thousands of men across Russia were handed draft papers, and NGOs helping conscripts were flooded with requests to help Thursday amid the military mobilization. They did say anybody who tries to dodge it could face up to 10 years in jail. Anti-mobilization demonstrators told the Moscow Times male protesters were given draft papers at the police station. So apparently if you got arrested there, you are now conscripted. Mobilized men at Magadan. You can see pretty long lines. According to further descriptions of another scene where in Moscow, women watched her husband leave for war. There's a military recruiting officer who gave the detained men draft notifications. And you've got some clips, supposedly drunk Russians ahead of going on the bus, and people in rural areas saying, "We don't even have a present. What future are you talking about?" When their local recruiter told them that they have to fight for the future. So interesting, when there are flights departing out of Moscow and St. Petersburg today, the AP reported international flights departing Russia have either sold out or skyrocketed in price after Putin announced a mobilization of reservists. So I think that covers that. Of course, lots of protests, but we don't actually have a good view on the volume of protests. Most of them are clips of maybe a couple hundred people max. And in case you're in need of some new real estate or feel like moving, nuclearwarmap.com shows you where you might want to move. West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Wyoming, Montana, and a couple more places out west. Western Colorado all seem to be some of the last places in the event of nuclear fallout or a massive nuclear attack on all of these cities. So interesting to take a look at nonetheless. Now, Russia's oil exports are set to plunge next year. Russia's oil exports have been resilient since it invaded Ukraine, falling just 400,000 barrels per day, below pre-war levels despite international sanctions. The EU's embargo on crude oil this December and its embargo on oil products in February will displace 2.4 million barrels per day of oil, which, cover this in a video as well, they're probably just going to divert through a new pipeline through Mongolia, and the Chinese are going to pick up the slack and then probably export it to the countries to get around the sanctions on Russia. It's still going to be Russian oil. While Russia may be able to find buyers for roughly half of that supply, it seems inevitable that its exports will fall dramatically. Yes, on paper, the exports to the EU due to the fuel embargo will fall, but like I said, there's ways to circumvent that. China seeks continuing constructive role in settling the Ukrainian crisis as they continue to play both sides of the coin. Now, let me move this off the screen real quick and pull up exactly what Anthony Blinken said to the Chinese foreign minister. It is headache inducing, but first we'll start with the main points that he talked about held on the September 23rd between the Chinese foreign minister Wang Yi and U.S. Secretary Anthony Blinken, whose IQ is that of a room temp thermostat at best. Now, Yi's statements were the current Sino-American relations are facing a serious challenge. There are lessons the U.S. should learn from this. The relations are at a critical stage, and both sides urgently need to establish the right path so that the two main countries get along with each other in responsible attitude to the world, history, and peoples of the two countries, and contribute to the stability of relations between the United States and China. The Taiwan issue is the core of China's main interests. The United States has committed itself to China on the Taiwan issue. There are three joint Sino-American Reports the current U.S. government has repeatedly stated that it does not support Taiwan independence. U.S. actions go against this. They are trying to undermine the sovereignty and territorial integrity of China, are engaged in the so-called containment of China together with Taiwan, sending a very wrong and dangerous signal, Yi told Blinken. United States should return to the three Sino-American joint messages and the One China principle and make it clear that they oppose all kinds of separatist activities aimed at Taiwan independence. The Taiwan issue is an internal matter of China, and the United States has no right to interfere. China's position in resolving the Taiwan issue is consistent and clear. It will continue to adhere to the basic policy of peaceful reunification and one country, two systems. Anyway, getting into Blinken's statements, he said U.S.-China relations are currently going through a difficult period. No duh, Sherlock. And it is in the interest of both sides to return to bilateral relations to stable the track. The two countries have successfully dealt with differences in the past, and the United States is ready for frank communication and dialogue with China in order to avoid misunderstandings and erroneous judgments and find a way forward. The United States does not seek, here's the big takeaway if you've been sleeping, the United States does not seek a new Cold War. The policy of one China has not changed, and the United States does not support Taiwan independence. Blinken clarified again just yesterday, September 23rd, 2022, the United States does not seek a new Cold War, but the policy of one China has not changed either. The United States does not support Taiwan's independence. So they have officially put that nail in the coffin. And if you ask me, I don't think they could do any more to try and convince China that it is A-OK to take Taiwan. Zelensky is shocked by the lack of support from Israel as he goes after the Middle East now, who has not supported him. I don't understand what happened. I don't understand why they can't supply us with anti-aircraft missiles. Israel has provided us with nothing. Nothing. Zero. He has gone on TV and lashed out at Israel. And Russia prepares to ramp up stealth jet production amid rising threat of war with the West. And in case you thought it looked like an F-16, well, that's because that's what it's modeled after. The Su-57 is essentially that. Now, you got to remember, countries like Russia and China have saved quite literally trillions over the last few decades, especially post-Cold War, on simply nicking U.S. technology after we spend the money on research and development. They can steal the designs and then counter-engineer it, or backwards engineer it, and they get to save, like I said, decades and trillions of dollars, and they're developing these fifth-generation stealth fighter jets. Again, the Russian Air Force will receive new Su-57 jet fighters this year from Rostech's head. Said on the company's Telegram channel, keep an eye on Rostech as I covered them a couple videos ago, coming out with their fourth-generation armor, which from the looks of it, and I'll keep it with a grain of salt, has a little bit more advanced capabilities than what the U.S. is currently fielding. So it'll be interesting to see as we move towards exoskeletons and some more stuff like that inside the U.S. military as well. Estonian Prime Minister warns of blackouts if Russia disconnects Baltic states from the grid. And I think that's a little bit more than a warning. That's pretty much a guaranteed prophecy for this winter, especially if you're in Germany or the UK. Now, the Prime Minister of Estonia warned that her country faces blackouts if, now that should probably say when, Russia disconnects the three Baltic states, all NATO and EU members, from its grid amid the ongoing Russo-Western sanctions war. We must be prepared that Russia might disconnect Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania from their electricity grid, warned the Prime Minister in an address to the nation on Thursday evening. So, although Estonia has been preparing for emergency desynchronization from the Russian electricity system for years, there may still be temporary problems with the supply of electricity. It would be wise to be prepared for possible power outages. And they're also telling you should stock up on food, water, etc. And when they tell you 14 days, you should usually multiply that by, at least 10 to 100. That's right, 100 times whatever they're telling you to prepare for. The U.S. empire is accelerating towards global conflict on two fronts. Now, basically, to sum up this article, we're pissing off, obviously, the Russians in this proxy war, especially if we send long-range missiles to Ukraine. And the U.S. has been pouring into another massive geopolitical powder keg just in the past few weeks alone, which you just heard me highlight between the correspondence of Blinken, and, of course, the Chinese foreign minister. And, of course, Nancy Pelosi's trip to Taiwan didn't help things, nor did the other group of congressmen that went there. So keep an eye, because at the end of the day, we cannot fight both the Chinese and the Russians simultaneously, especially as we head into winter and most of the EU countries and our allies are stuck trying to not to freeze to death, scavenging for wood in their backyards, and debating on capitulating to the Russians for energy. And the EU Watchdog proposes a suspension of energy derivatives trading. Speaking of energy, because that will solve all the problems. Price cap energy, and just don't let people trade the futures. Germany, Green plan to ban native Germans from a third of jobs to promote diversity. Isn't equality great? So now, Green mayor makes the difference. By the end of 2026, a third of newly advertised positions in the city should be filled by applicants with a migration background. Hey, listen, whoever's the most qualified, I don't care who, what, when, where, why, how, whoever deserves the job, regardless of their background, skin color, ethnicity, religion, blah, 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 should get the job. Amazon air deliveries slump as shipping slowdown worsens. FedEx warned of weakening shipping demand last week, while some analysts said the company's failures to adapt contributed to its subpar performance. Keep in mind, April's Amazon's air fleet was reportedly 88 planes. They were hoping it would surpass 100, but has actually decreased, flashing red signals from Amazon and FedEx as the Biden administration cheers endlessly about the strongest recovery ever. While internally, we are combusting. FedEx announces the largest general rate increase in its history. Ding, ding, ding. Inflation announced that late Thursday a 6.9% general rate increase for 2023, the largest year-over-year increase in its history. That increase will apply to all FedEx services, and they're saying it could even range up to 7.9% depending on the customer's transportation rate scales. Typically, they raise it about 5 to 6% a year, and now we're looking at 8. And to wrap things up, Goldman throws in the towel, slashes S&P 500 price target to 3,600, warns that a recession crash will take us down to 3,150 on the S&P 500. Whew. And if that's what they're saying, and we actually get into a depression, look out below, because I don't think the elevator is going to find a basement anywhere around that area. So if you guys found anything interesting in today's video, go ahead and leave a like, thumbs up, comment down below, and subscribe. Have a good weekend. I'll see you guys tomorrow.